Welcome back. Ratings agency Fitch has kept both South Africa's local and foreign currency credit ratings unchanged at BB+, one notch below investment grade with a stable outlook. In April, Fitch downgraded South Africa's credit rating to sub-investment grade after President Zuma abruptly fired Pravin Gordhan as finance minister, saying it will likely result in a change in economic policy direction. Fitch says affirmation reflects that while a number of developments point to a weaker fiscal outlook and consequent faster pace of debt accumulation, potential fiscal consolidation measures after the ANC's elective conference in December could mitigate those trends. Moody's and S&P Global Ratings are due to announce their decisions today. A one-notch cut of the local currency rating by both agencies will likely trigger forced selling of up to $12 billion of the country's bonds. And Namibia's President Hage Geingob says his country will not seek a bailout from the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, even though its economy is struggling. Mr. Geingob, who has presided over an economy that has been downgraded to junk by Moody's and Fitch, is being challenged for the party's presidency by long-time rival and current sports minister Jerry Ekonjo and former Prime Minister Nahas Angula. The Southern African country's economy has seen growth nosedive from an average 5% growth over the last 5 years to a marginal 0.2% last year. In a speech at the ruling SWAPO Party's Congress, the president, who is the party's acting president, said Namibia would manage without help from the global lenders. Namibia's economy is expected to grow at 1.6% this year and by double that in 2018 as the mining sector emerges from years of contraction and the impact of recent severe drought on farming eases. And Bombardier Incorporated's training equipment arm is looking to build a factory in Morocco if it wins a contract to supply rolling stock to the country's state-owned railways. The facility would build rail cars and perform engineering and maintenance work. It will have about 600 employees and could open as soon as 2020. ONCF, Morocco's state railway, is in the midst of a drive to modernize and expand its network. Part of the efforts involves buying train sets worth up to 15 billion dirhams. Morocco's national content rules require at least 40% of the value of an order to be sourced locally. Bombardier would also use the proposed Moroccan factory for export purposes. And here in Nigeria, the power sector reform has seen successive governments with diverse initiatives implemented to improve electricity supply. With a new regulation in the pipeline again, some experts at a meeting of the organized private sector brainstorm on some of the concerns in the system, coming up with suggestions on how government can leverage the domestic energy mix.
We've been talking incentives, we've been talking about subsidies, and the question is who pays for it. Today, if you look at the power value chain, only 15% of what you call invested capacity, which is pretty much installed capacity, is recovered. That is a bankrupt business on any scale that you want to look at it. So when you look at that dynamic, and you start to basically look at what we're talking about, it is no simple journey. The movement that he talked about from 2.6 to 4.6 on a delivered basis, but a capacity to basically deliver 7 is a huge jump. But even that does not begin to agree with what the needs shall be. The journey is long. The diversification, the energy mix is great. The last thing I want to basically end on is pretty much your comment. Yeah. And it's very easy to say this, that with the NIPC pretty much said 4% of the energy mix in 2020, which is supposed to be 40 gigawatts, yeah, is supposed to be, is that enough for us? And these are the things that we also need to put in context, because do the math. 4% of 40 gigawatts is 1.6 gigawatts. That's about half the power on the grid today. Talking about coming from solar. And you need to remember, from a commercial standpoint, solar globally is not exactly the most viable way of generating power. But you do need energy mix and you need energy diversification, which requires incentives and subsidies. But balancing that out means that, and remember, gas is also the cheapest way of generating power. You have a lot of gas, which means it is not a one-to-one equation. It is not a simple turn on the lights and things happen. It is a very complex journey we have ahead of us, because balancing what you pretty much incentivize and subsidize with what you pretty much have to basically grow that power in the system to actually drive economic revolution is no easy task. And that's what faces all of us as stakeholders today.
Maybe pioneer status might not be the right incentive if I want to incentivize investment in solar. We should look at things that are more critical, taxes that they pay on a day-to-day basis. The first one is custom duties. Today, if you bring solar panels into the country, you get an exemption from custom duty. But the panels don't work on their own. You're not going to place panels on top of a roof and expect that power will come in. It's not possible. There are other equipments that would come in with those panels. But as it is today, those equipments don't have exemptions. Only the panels have exemption. And if you bring in the panels with the equipment that you would need to use to construct a solar plant, what you would find is that you would have to pay duty of close to, at times, 30 to 35%. So we need to simplify that process, and we need to ensure that if we intend to grant exemptions to solar panels, it should also include the equipment. The second thing is there's a whole lot of focus around the guys bringing in the guys constructing this plant and the guys investing. There's been very little focus on the guys who would also be making use. And I think that's one avenue that we've basically taken our eyes off the ball. People have talked about subsidizing the cost of the panels and all of that, but I don't agree, because if there is a subsidy, somebody else would have to pay the cost. And who would it be? Maybe government. So rather than a subsidy, why don't we put an incentive that says,
and finally, on the global oil markets, crude oil rose to a 2-year high on Friday as the shutdown of a major crude pipeline from Canada to the United States tightened North American markets. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were at $58.44 a barrel, up 42 cents from their last settlement. Price rose to as much as $58.58 a barrel earlier on Friday, the highest since July 1, 2015. However, Brent crude futures were at $63.42, down 13 cents. The closure of the 590,000 barrel per day Keystone pipeline following a spill last week has driven up U.S. crude as stockpiles at the storage hub of Goshen, Oklahoma. Markets have also been tightening globally due to an effort by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and a group of other producers, including Russia, to withhold 1.8 million barrels per day of production. The deal is to restrict output expires in March 2018, but OPEC will meet on November 30 to discuss its policy, and it is expected to extend the cuts. And that's a wrap on the program for today and, of course, for the week. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chimizi Obi Uwaldo.